Lisa Lewis is here to tell us about Omnium, a bold new circus. Lisa began her career as a graduate of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus Clown College. She has a BA from Brandeis University and earned a master's degree in clown history from NYU. She co-founded Super Scientific Circus and spent many years working with Big Apple Circus in multiple capacities. Lisa's passion for sharing the magic of circus, combined with her many years of experience, inspired her to reimagine the art form of circus for the 21st century as Omnium, a bold new circus. Sharing in the joy and excitement of the performing arts is an experience that everyone should be available to everyone, regardless of background, race, gender, or ability. And Omnium makes that happen. So please welcome Lisa.
Hi. My name is Lisa Lewis. Thanks, Melissa, for that amazing introduction. It's interesting because I am a person who has not previously identified as having a disability myself. However, according to many friends, I am. So there you have it. And I could identify not anyway. So how did I get into this? Why did I become so involved in presenting for the world community and particularly inclusive of the disability community? And when I started, I realized one of my first experiences with Ringling Brothers was performing as a clown and seeing an entire section of the audience completely shut down. And in the middle of that section was a group of very, very angry teenagers sitting with their arms folded and just being surly as teenagers are wont to do. The person with whom I was working at the time went up to them and immediately started signing. Now, I was 19 at the time. I didn't know somebody's deaf. No, it's not visible. How am I supposed to know? Somehow he knew, began signing. Their entire demeanor changed with the ability to communicate. Suddenly they felt included. And because their demeanor changed, the entire section of 500 seats at Madison Square Garden also changed. And I realized the power of inclusion at that moment. Fast forward 20 years, I'm now creating inclusive programming in New York. And we started with simple programs like most theater companies do, where you say, oh, let's bring in the blind kids. Let's bring in the deaf kids. You get a little grant, you attach audio description for one day. Well, I very quickly realized that that was not sufficient. I mean, it sold out. People were lining up. It was very easy at that time. They had enough grants that we were giving away tickets. By the time I left, the entire economy had shifted and that was no longer feasible. And yet it was still necessary. So you've offered what is essentially family entertainment, what is popular entertainment. And you've said, okay, you can't access this on a normal basis, but we'll let you come at 10 o'clock in the morning and we'll give you access. To me, that was insufficient. Creating that access, I also realized that there was a much broader need to include neurodiversities as well as simply blind or deaf. That's two. There's a long list of things that require access. How do I switch numbers? I told you, please forgive me. Oh yeah, now. Ta-da! I'm also reasonably low vision, so there you have it. Okay. So I was speaking about a year ago with an incredible gentleman named Eric Winemeyer, who climbed to the top of Mount Everest. Eric Winemeyer is blind. He made it all the way to the summit of Mount Everest, and he'd never witnessed a circus. He'd never seen a circus. He's got a family, he's got kids, had never been to a circus. Had he never been? No, he's been. And his kids always said, Dad, this is just too complicated. Just listen to the music. So ours was the first experience he had. And it's really, to me, very important with disability to access disabilities as a unifying force in the world, because I genuinely believe we are. Disability is the one thing that genuinely unifies all people. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care to what socioeconomic level you were born. It doesn't care if you're male, female, non-binary. It doesn't care. It's the one thing that unifies all of us together. So this is the first slide. Our mission, there's our ringmaster, Mr. Jonathan Lee Iverson. So when the pandemic hit in 2020 and all live entertainment came down, it was a marvelous opportunity for me and for all of us to create, because now you've got all these wonderful creative brains and nothing to do. Bonus. So we did. We moved on, we created Omnium. I'm assuming you all can read that and I don't need to read it for you. Awesome. So when you think circus and disability, you don't generally pair them together. Circus artists are by their nature misfits because we're generally over history have been a traveling company. Many, many families. So misfit, when Melissa asked me to speak, I was thinking, what are preconceptions and what are current conceptions? And how do we want to change the paradigm? So when you think circus, you would think sideshow. I get many, many questions. Well, the circus had the sideshow. Yes, at that time and space, the circus had a sideshow. At that time and space, those with disabilities were killed, isolated, or locked away in institutions. Circus provided employment. Great employment? No, but that wasn't a great world then either. But it did provide employment. As we've moved forward and our society has progressed, and we no longer see people with physical differences as someone who needs to be locked away, where we're learning to accept and to love and to respect each other as people, whatever is going on in our bodies. Our world has shifted and we're now learning to honor people. So popular entertainment needed to catch up, and it does need to catch up. If you look in the world of any arts field right now, the inclusion of those with disabilities is about right there. For many, many, many reasons, which aren't part of this talk. So we'll move on. So what can we do? We can open our hearts, we can open our brains, and we can figure it out. So in the circus, we've gone from misfits to using popular entertainment to really change the world. I think of circus as an innovating instigator for change, because that's what popular entertainment at its best can be. And we do have to put, as you have all said, we do have to put, as Melissa said, you have to put the artistry first. 1 in 4 people in the United States and 1 in 6 in the world have a disability, at least according to the last statistics I've read. So that means in order to be inclusive, you must include that 1. You must also include the other 3. So now 4 people have to come together, and they all need collective access to the same artistry or parallel artistry. So you have to include and you have to put the artistry first, because if the show's not good, nobody's going to come. Doesn't matter if it's not good, nobody wants to see it. So the artistry has to come first. And as we were creating, our artistic director, a gentleman named Noe Espana, kept saying to me, Lisa, you're really focused on all the inclusion, but the show's got to be good, because otherwise no one's coming. So we've made a genuine effort towards that, and it has so far worked. So interesting points in history where popular entertainment has supported the world economy and hasn't supported change. In 1878, the circus introduced electricity. These are all in America. That's where I'm from, and that's the history with which I am familiar. I'm sure there's a parallel history in other countries. I'm just not as familiar with it because it's not my own history. In 1896, P.T. Barnum introduced the first horseless carriage, Buchanan cars. In 2020, we launched our virtual program, and I'm going to show you some pieces of that in a minute. In 2021, we premiered our first live production. And it was a wonderful circumstance of, this is where I'm going to go. Oops, no, I'm not. Here we're going to go. And then we changed. And it's really an adaptation of figuring out where you are and what you can do. So we opened our first production in collaboration with Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C., which is I don't know, I'm assuming all of you are aware. You know what Gallaudet is? Have you heard of it? It's a university. It's the only university in the United States that was founded by an act of Congress by a group of people who actually came over from France of, by, and for people who are deaf. So it's a phenomenal learning institution. So we are reimagining our world. And I'm going to read this part. We believe that the circus experience, inclusive of a full spectrum of people and representative of all people, and our global structure as artists and audiences leads the way to a truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive society. We create a safe space where people from diverse backgrounds can experience wonder, joy, and laughter together. And through shared positive experiences, we can promote empathy among all people and inspire healthier communities. So now we're moving beyond audience access. Now we're moving into representation, because that is equally vital. You see yourself on stage. You look next to the person sitting next to you and say, wow, that person looks like you. If that person can do that, you can do that. And it engenders respect among peers. I can do that. Wow, I'll inspire myself. You can do that. Now I believe in you more. And that's equally as important as having representation for yourself. Being able to see your neighbor in others is equally valid and also really, really vital in our community. The next section I love. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. So this is a little bit of kind of how we do it. We have a tripod of missions, as it were. Education, both for children and adults, working in the school system, working with our virtual production, and teaching artists who are of various abilities, who are of various demographics. Checkboxes, as I sarcastically will say, checkboxes, because I want to be as representative of the audiences that we serve for the reasons that I've already mentioned. Again, with adult education, incorporate diversity, equity, access, and inclusion in the workplace, because people genuinely don't know. At a generation level of my own, people are very unfamiliar with it. They've grown up in silos. We grew up with different immigrant communities, very much stuck together out of need and out of economic need. And so people were not exposed to those who were different from themselves. So the basic exposure is vital. You can't understand someone unless you've met them, unless you've said, hi, how are you? Who are you? And you have a communication which is far greater than just seeing them on a TV screen. It's very easy to lump people together when you have no direct contact. It's much more difficult to dislike someone or to be prejudiced against them when you know them as a person. So that's a really important way of breaking through the misconceptions and the barriers of disability. And then employment. Our company employs over 25%, I think we're at about 50% at this point, people with disabilities. Now, in searching for that, it's an interesting process because people with disabilities have not had access to these opportunities. Finding someone who is already professional and qualified and trained, because as a new company, I don't have time to train you. I've got a show to do. You got to know what you're doing. But find someone with two parallel people, one with a disability and one without, who are equally trained, is actually very, very challenging. And in the United States, we also try to incorporate, because we're a nation of immigrants, we try very hard to incorporate across the spectrum of that. And again, historically, there have been a lack of opportunities, so there have been a lack of people trying for those opportunities. Do they exist? Yes, of course, you just have to dig harder. So we've set up an apprenticeship program to try to support and encourage people from underserved populations to join the world of professional arts. So this is audience accessibility. And the pictures are all from our show and from audiences, so you'll get a fun time looking at those. As someone mentioned earlier in their questioning, you cannot accommodate all the people all of the time. So creating that balance is really important. Audio description. Are you guys online or in person? How many of you are familiar with audio description? Okay. So if you don't know, it's just it's a way of verbally describing what one would take in through their visual senses. It's an art form. It's a real art form. And it's not difficult to do. That's an easy point. Incorporating sign language, in our case, American Sign Language, but British Sign Language, whichever, as a part of the production, so people aren't distanced. So the deaf people don't have to sit over here and watch the interpreter while the entire show is taking place over there. That always bothered me, particularly as a woman who is hard of hearing, because I wanted to look back and forth, and I can't. And so you're removed from the action, and you're not a part of the presentation and of the entertainment. So to integrate that became very important. Neurodiversity is very important. It's not difficult to not turn the sound up too loud. There are simple things that you can do. Can it be completely everything to all people? Of course not. Nothing ever can. But you do the best you can. And you ask people, if you need a little more of this, a little more of that, how can we do our best to accommodate you so that everyone can feel comfortable? Am I close? Oh, rats. Can I get a little bit? Okay. I'm actually going to need some technical help on this. How do I get to, so while we're working on that, this is the picture of the first virtual production that we created during the pandemic. We worked with an organization in New York called Disability Unite to create a really innovative platform whereby we could have 4 access channels simultaneously so that everyone could enjoy the production together. So when you log into our virtual production, you'll see across the bottom 4 different access channels. It's the same show. You choose how you need it. Where that little arrow is pointing up, that's for people with slower internet speeds, because economics are also a real barrier to a lot of people being able to enjoy productions. So maybe you have a slower internet speed. You can adjust it on your own computer, and that's how. Okay, so now I want to get to a website. And what I want to show you while we're setting this up is the power of representation. I'm going to show you little clips of 3 people if we have time, and if not, we'll do it later. But they're 3 artists, and the first thing to notice is their artistry. Then you'll understand why. All right, so I'm going to show the, we're going to show the typical version first. This is a general audience experience. Then I'll show just 1 minute of it. Then I'll show the second one with a different access point so that you can see the differences. Oh, is that better? All right, well, you guys are just gonna have to wait. Oh, well. So, sorry, come to my workshop. Anyway, thank you all very, very much. And if you do have questions, I'm around.